This episode is sponsored by WACOM, WACOM.com. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Face the Truth. This week is a little different than usual because my guest came to my studio and we recorded in person. This is because I currently do not have a good enough camera, so there's no video. So instead of video, I'll be sharing my guest artwork. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see his awesome work while listening to our talk. Also, I've been asked lately by a few people if I could get more into me and my work and you know, kind of share a little bit more about myself. And I do that occasionally on this podcast, but mostly I'm interested in learning about other artists that I have on as my guests. However, this week I was a guest on the With Our Arms to the Sun podcast, and we got into a lot of things about my work, as well as some personal things, including being bullied as a kid in school, you know, all that sort of fun stuff. I think it turned out well, and if you're a fan of this podcast, I think you'll enjoy our talk. I will leave a link to that podcast under this video on YouTube. My guest this week is one of the first artists to tattoo me. And he is the first artist that I had do large pieces on me. He's one of the best in the biz, and on top of that, a really nice guy who takes his art seriously. One of the things that helped him to be as good as he is that he is very self-critical, hard on himself, and always pushes and challenges himself. He's a kick-ass artist and an awesome dude. Please welcome my pal, Tim Biedron. I just pushed record, just so you know, so anytime you're ready, we can, whatever.
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much for doing this, for joining me for this. And just so everybody knows, we're recording in my studio, and this is different than normal. So we're in person. Tim lives here in Chicago, and it is a Friday night, and all of my kids are here, so you might hear my 1.5-year-old scream every once in a while. It's real life, so can't do much about it. But anyways, yeah, thank you so much for doing this. And
no problem.
So Tim basically did some of my not my first tattoos, but my first serious tattoos. When I first met Tim, oh gosh, I think it was on 2007 or 2008 or something like that, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I had a few sporadic tattoos, like, you know, I had like a couple on each arm, and from my punk rock days, and then I decided at that point that I really wanted to go for a sleeve, and so we started with my left arm, and my first tattoo with you was a full sleeve all the way up to my chest. Yeah, the dragon. Yeah. And
it's still there too.
Yeah, still there. Still looks good. Yeah. So basically. I started, you know, I had you do like a bunch more tattoos on me, but I love your work so much. And the one thing I really enjoyed about your work, what brought me to it right away, was the quality of your design and your line work, because there's a lot of tattoos out there that just all look the same. There's a lot of artists that have like, they're really, really good, but it's like, it's not like, you know, something that jumps out. And then there's people that try, that I personally think, oh, that guy is trying way too hard to have his own style, and it just doesn't feel like tattoos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's well, I think a lot of what has made that happen is just the idea of how accessible, like to everyone in general, but even like amongst other tattooers and you know, illustrators, whoever, just how accessible all that imagery is. Like when I started tattooing, you would submit stuff to like a magazine, like an actual photo from like Walgreens. Oh yeah. You know, 1 hour photo, and then you'd put it in an envelope with a stamp, and then maybe they'd publish it, and then you'd go grab a tattoo magazine at a bookstore, and like that's how you saw other stuff. But now it's all, yeah, you know, there's no more of that, like, oh, did you hear about this obscure person in, you know, some far off European country? Like everybody knows everybody now. I have clients that say that kind of stuff, that they're telling me about people I've never heard. I mean, I don't really know that many people anyway, but you know, they'll just be like, oh, have you heard of whoever? And I'm like, you know, sometimes I have, sometimes I'm just like, oh no, and then they'll show me, you know, on their Instagram. I'm like, where the hell does this guy come from?
That's funny. Yeah, there's you've got like what I like about your stuff too is you've got a very organic, like, it's obvious. I mean, if anyone like goes to your website and reads your bio, it's
Yeah.
very clear. But they don't even have to read the bio; just look at the work. You're very into nature, wildlife, and there is like a very organic, like aesthetic in your work though. Like for example, I really love some of my favorite stuff of yours, is your ink drawings that you do. There's a couple that you did like with the trees and different things like that.
That stuff's that's a recent sort of development. Like I didn't ever think I was going to do that kind of stuff. It was like, actually the first one I did, I'm sure over the years I probably did an ink drawing, but like, I don't know, even when I say that, I can't necessarily think of a particular one. But anyway, the catalyst for even doing pen and ink at all was the shop was 5 years old, and we were going to have like a party, and we thought a cool idea would be to do some kind of poster, make prints of it, and have it as something people could buy that like celebrated our 5 years of the shop being around. And
that's awesome.
My history with prints and stuff, doing like paintings, I've done some painting, not a ton, but like, you just look at it and you're like, that's way off. So my logic for the entire reason I started doing pen and ink at all was, well, if it's black and white, they're not going to screw that up, that was literally the reason. I was just like, well, if I do a painting and then I spend a bunch of money on prints and say I got 100 prints, and I'm going to look at them and be like, oh, God, this isn't what this is supposed to look like. So I just decided I was going to do a pen and ink. So I did a Pioneer poster with a bunch of nature stuff on it. Took me forever. That was probably the hardest I've worked on anything. And it was for nothing. It was just for the heck of it, and to like as a little promo thing.
They're amazing drawings though, man. They're like when you did those, is there like a plan? Like, did you sketch it out, or do you just start getting in there with the ink and just kind of just let it come to life?
Well, so for instance, that first one, a lot of homework, a lot of prep, worked out pretty much the whole thing on tracing paper, not unlike how I do my tattoo stuff. Just because I thought, like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I better have a good roadmap for this. I'm not going to wing it. And it had lettering, it said Pioneer, and I'm like, I don't. Well, you mentioned like, oh, you like that my stuff's organic. It's like, it's not an accident. I don't do straight lines because they're terrible to do. You know what I mean? Like, there's a select few people where you can pull that stuff off. I'm not one of them, and so it's also stuff I like doing. But then the fringe benefit is like, none of it has straight lines either. So so like the pen and ink stuff, there's the stuff that where I feel like I can sit down and just start doing hatch marks and just let it kind of grow. I have a better roadmap. I've done my homework a little bit. Stuff that's in like my moleskin sketchbook, where I just kind of have this notion of something organic, like a tree stump or whatever. I will just start going. I'll do a couple little doodles. It'll be super loose, just like the movement of it, basically, but no values or anything. And there's a certain spontaneity to that I like with the pen and ink, but every freaking time I like totally like, I call it, I'm not painting, but I call it like painting myself into a corner, because I haven't done any homework. I'm just dicking around, making knot holes and moss and whatever the hell else, and then I get to a part of it, I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this corner, and inevitably I'm just like, well, I'm not like selling it, so I just flip the page and just forget about it. Sometimes I'll revisit it, and sometimes it's like that stuff is so, for me, like, because I'm pretty new at it, it's so time intensive that to just say like, oh, I'll fix this corner, like if it's 4 square inches that's jacked up that I want to try and fix or whatever, that's like hours and hours and hours of work. So I have to decide, like, all right, is this like bullshit tree stump worth, you know what I mean? Is it worth saving? Is it worth putting all that time into it just to be like, meh, that didn't really work, So that's the luxury I have, in that it's just for fun. You know what I mean? I do it just to.
Well, that's important though. Because like as a tattoo artist, I know that you. You've got, I'm pretty sure you've got like a waiting list of people, right? Because you do appointment only, right?
I do appointment only.
And then you spend your nights doing homework, basically working on ideas and drawing up people's.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean that's in waves, right? So obviously once you have a project that's coming up, you have to have the drawing for that project. But once you've started it, say outlined a sleeve or whatever it is, doesn't matter the size. I mean, most of this stuff I do is multiple sessions. So once you got the outline down, you don't have any more homework for that person.
Yeah.
So the next time their appointment rolls around,
you just continue.
I'm just starting it. So really your homework is before your first session. And then once it's all laid out on the person, then I have like the next time they're on my books, I don't have to draw for them because it's already started.
Yeah.
So this kind of, over the years, I've noticed a distinct rhythm like that because it's all, you know, you see the same faces every 2 weeks or every month or something like that. So I'll have these like 2, 3, maybe a month long period where it's just like homework drawing every night, like, you know, 3, 4 new projects a week or whatever. And then as you finish all those people are coming back in the following month and they've all got it started. So you end up with like 2 weeks where you're like, oh, let's draw shit tonight, you know? And that's when it's like you want to, you know, those are the times when I'm like, man, I should be doing something.
Yeah.
You know? Like those are the times that I really am hard on myself because I'm like, oh no, I'll just watch another Mystery Science Theater or something. And I like it should be, it's nice to have the deadline of, I gotta have something drawn by 12:30 tomorrow. And if even if I think it's a drag and I don't want to like sit down and do it, having that deadline, there's never a time when I'm like, man, I don't feel like doing this. I'm gonna have to cancel this person tomorrow. You know, like or you know, I mean, sure you have to cancel, but it's never about I don't want to do the drawing.
Yeah.
It's just like it's gonna get done, right? So I just know that on the days I have homework, it's going to get done whether I'm up till 4 a.m. or whether I go to bed first and then get up super early, get up at 4 a.m. to do it. I've found over the years that works a lot better for me. I'll get home from work, say I got to draw for something the next day. Even if I've got plenty of time to do it, I just am like zoned out after tattooing all day. And I'm like, I'm going to go to bed early. I'm going to get up at like 5 a.m. and start drawing. And I'm way more focused, you know?
Yeah,
Because you're going from awake and groggy to being more awake versus starting it when you're groggy and going totally downhill.
And tattooing, I mean, I've never tattooed, but it seems like
something for the listeners.
Yeah, let's try it right now. It seems like a very tiring thing though if you're doing it like all day, like holding the gun and just the repetition of it, you know. It's because it's obviously what I was gonna say is it's obviously, you know, it's different than drawing,
right?
And you know,
there's a physical toll for sure.
It's a different, you know, type of a thing, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot of trying to maintain your posture. You know, you're working on some weird area like someone's ribs or something. There's definitely like these spots that were like on a person when you're gonna tattoo them, and you just think like, yeah, I'm gonna be wrecked at the end of this session because it's like some weird ribs are. You ask any tattooer, you know what I mean? Because there's nowhere to like lean your elbows.
Dude,
you know.
Speaking of, I remember, so you did my entire back piece.
This is true.
And so I didn't know what to expect, and but it was the most brutal thing I've ever experienced. And basically, you have to get all the line work done in one sitting, one day. So that, you know, because you don't want to lose the stencil and all that. And then basically, I remember it was like from May to October, I was coming in to get all the coloring done. So that's how long it took to get the coloring done. So it's a commitment. But I remember going in to get the line work done the first day, and I don't remember how many hours it was. You remember like 6 hours maybe? Or?
It was probably at least 5 hours. Which I don't want to make you feel bad about this or anything, but I have sort of changed my methods over the years, you know. So what I usually do is, you know, you're like, thanks a lot, jerk.
Well, I was gonna say though, by the end of that tattoo, that day, you know, getting all the line work done, I think I was getting what they call is the tattoo flu.
Oh yeah.
I started like shaking.
Yeah.
And I remember like you only had like a little bit to do on my my back and a hip area, and it was gonna be done. And it was to the point of, I mean, I was pretty good most of the time, but it was brutal. I was like doing Lamaze basically.
Yeah.
And then when you got to the very end of it, every single time you touched me, I was just like, oh, it was just like torture. And I remember and some guy sat down for the other tattoo artist that was there, and he was getting a small thing on his arm. And I remember he just sat down and he's just getting started, and he was going, oh, yeah. And I remember just thinking, you shut the fuck up. You have no idea. And I'm like literally shaking and like.
You're over there in the trenches. You're like, come on, man.
Dude. And then the funny thing, I remember once you told me, you said, you're the one that wanted to do this.
Yeah, right. It was your bright idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's so like people kind of direct their frustration at me, and I'm like, man, I was sitting around minding my own business.
I don't think
you called me.
I don't think I was doing that to you, though.
No, but when people are like, oh man, I want to.
I mean, and here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't want people to think that I'm a big pussy, but like I'm pretty much
too late.
I'm pretty much tattooed everywhere. I'm very tattooed, and so I've felt what tattoo pain feels like almost everywhere. And there's areas that hurt more than others. Like my collarbone's not very pleasant. Elbow. Well, actually, the elbow wasn't that bad. Arm. I remember like up in this area underneath the armpit. That's kind of sensitive. But most things, even the neck, it's like there's some areas that hurt, but it's not that bad. You just kind of whatever, you know. But the back was something I just wasn't mentally prepared for what it was.
I run into that a lot. I mean,
it was just like way beyond what I thought.
I'm not one of these guys that like cranks out back pieces left and right, but I've done my share of them, and it's really uncommon for me to get someone that just like lays there and is like, oh yeah, this is just getting tattooed. Most of the time it's like, holy crap, why did I decide to do this?
Because it's like we were talking before, it's all bone. It's like scapula, ribs, spine, you know, and then
when it's not bone, it's just organs.
So it's pretty brutal. Kidneys. I remember I started like kind of self-meditating. I was I was laying on a massage table, had my face through the thing, and I remember in my mind going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right.
1, 2, 3. I was just like counting to 10 over and over again, and then.
I mean, I remember you doing all right.
Yeah.
I remember, more when people are freaking out.
Yeah.
Flipping up, flopping all over the place.
It was mostly towards the end of it when I was just like, oh, this is so fucking crazy.
I was saying before, it's like, huge stuff like that.
So you changed it.
The game plan's a little different for those reasons, because most people don't want to sit there for 5 hours and just get hammered.
So do you have to like do just part of it and then?
Sometimes I can do part of it if there's a pretty clean cut area to separate in the design. You can re-stencil. I always shoot for doing the whole thing, but I kind of have the parachute, if you will, if they're really just done. Because then what do? I can't make them lay there and finish it. If you get to a stopping point, you get to a stopping point. It can happen. So I always have the mentality like, I'm going to fly through this. I'm not going to get caught up in this line's got to be thick and fancy and this has got to be whatever. And I'll just blaze through the whole thing.
Because you can kind of just go later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so then when you're shading or
just
going back to it, you can pick that area and tune up any of that stuff.
Yeah, because another part of the problem when you did mine was I didn't do this because I'm not a pussy, but
you're really
part of my mind
on this idea, right?
Part of my idea or my thinking after I got tattooed by you, my back was, it doesn't need to be colored.
Outline looks
it doesn't
fine.
Need to be colored, does it? No, I think it looks great because like you did such a beautiful job with the line work.
Yeah.
So I think this idea is smart of you. Just do kind of a shitty idea, or not shitty, but
then
just
they have to come back.
You have to come back to get it fixed up.
Well, that's the thing though, is doing it that way. At least for me, right? Doing that way where you just zip through it just kind of kills me because it's like my intuition to just like want to make it. It's like doing a pen and ink where I'm like, oh, I want to make this line thick, this line thin. I want this to be look all fancy or whatever. And you just have to like concede to the idea that like, well, when they walk out the door, this isn't even close to what it's going to look like when it's finished.
Yeah.
But it's no different than building up layers on a painting or a ink drawing or whatever, but you have someone else involved that may not get it. So a lot of times I find myself explaining like, okay, so don't look at this too close just yet, you know what I mean? Because you're going to find some wonky line and be like, what do you do here? You know,
I remember when you did my forearm here from like my elbow down. You did that like in 3 hours.
We hammered that out.
It was crazy.
I remember that as one of like the fastest tattoos I've probably ever done.
Yeah, it was.
Because I do remember that. I don't think it was quite 3. It might have been 4, but that was about it.
I don't know, man.
We like hammered that out.
It was. I remember being like, this is going pretty quick.
Yeah.
It was really crazy.
You never know, man. It's so. I was just talking about this at work. It's like the projects. You just sometimes don't know. You go into it and you think like, oh yeah, you know, that looks like it'll take me a couple hours today, and then you start putzing around, getting all noodly. I mean, my stuff's like pretty detailed and fancy, whatever that means, and yeah, I'll look back at what I got done during that session, and I like want to apologize to the like. They're like, oh, that's it.
Well, what's funny too is I remember part of the interesting thing about when I was getting my back done is we took breaks here and there, and I remember like while you're tattooing, I'm like in my mind I'm thinking you're on a certain area that you're actually not.
Right.
Because then we take a little break, a little breather, and I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God. There's that much more to go.
Yeah, right. All your nerve endings are messing with you. You're like, yeah, it feels like he's all the way down at the bottom now, and I'm like 1/4 down.
I remember I remember when you were doing my first sleeve. I remember getting pain in my leg.
Yeah.
Like it was like really weird. Like I'm just sitting there, and my arm feels fine, but I'm getting like this pain in my leg, and it's making me so uncomfortable. I'm just like, oh, like what's going on? Like this.
Yeah.
And the other thing that would happen
nerves
is
work like that.
Every single time I get tattooed, my mouth starts to water.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a normal thing for people, but my mouth starts to water.
I don't know. I never really asked anyone.
Isn't that? But
how's
okay.
your mouth doing while I'm tattooing?
It's just something that I've noticed for me. Is like it happens every time. Like I don't know if it's just I don't know what it is, but
it's your body being like, thanks, asshole.
Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah. I learned the hard way too, because like when I was first getting tattooed back in the punk rock days. I always wanted to get tattooed, but when I was in the bands, everyone was just getting tattoos. So it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my first couple tattoos. They were always small tattoos, so it was like in and out,
right? No
big deal. And then, I remember the first time I came in and got my sleeve done. You did all the line work in one day. I started towards the end of it. I started feeling kind of shaky, and I remember you saying, yeah, did you eat anything before you came in? I was like, no.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I don't know how long we sat for that. Yeah. Maybe 6 hours or something like that.
Right.
And that's when that's the time I learned too. Like, oh gee, if you're gonna get a long ass tattoo, you should probably get like a Subway sandwich or something.
Right.
Because all your nutrients are being sucked out of your body.
We should add that Subway's not paying us to.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be awesome. Hey, I don't care. Let's see.
Right. We heard you mention it on this.
Yeah.
Podcast.
But yeah, it's interesting. But I haven't, I haven't been tattooed basically for a long time, except for my daughter's name recently. The
eating thing is actually that's on our paperwork now.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the first things. Have you eaten in the last 4 hours? And people always ask, well, why is that? I have, but why is that? Because if someone said they haven't, I'd be like, all right. Like, just go get something. Get a donut or something. Like, you need something.
Yeah.
If you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go on a 5-mile run.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it with nothing in your system.
Don't drink, like, get wasted before.
Yeah, don't get wasted the night before.
Yeah.
Well, don't get wasted during it either. But that's another thing people always ask about. And I've got clients that are like, they have a beer or something like that beforehand. That's fine.
A beer, yeah.
When you notice it is when they've gotten like trashed the night before, and I start tattooing. I'm like, oh yeah,
did they bleed like way more, right?
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, okay.
It's because it's the alcohol has had a chance to be in their system and thinned their blood.
Yeah, that's so gross, man. That makes me think of something. What's one of the grossest things that's ever happened, or like, because there's got to be some stories, man. Because here's the thing. I
don't know if people want to hear.
No, this is
gross.
I want to hear this because here's the thing. One thing that's interesting about tattooing is, like for example, I feel like forever connected to you. because I consider you a friend. I respect you as an artist. But when you spend so much time with someone and they're tattooing you, there's some kind of weird, I don't even know how to explain it. It just feels like, you're permanently marking my body with your artwork, and it's almost like some kind of weird bond in my mind. I see it that way. It's like this weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's legitimate, and I think that has to do with. Like we have a lot in common and we can have conversations and, we get along and all that stuff. And that's different because there's people that are like, just tattoo and like the artist like puts on a pair of headphones and just starts tattooing. And like, that's fine if that's your gig or whatever and that's what you want to do.
I've had that before too and it's weird. Cause you kind of
so do you feel like a special bond with that person? No, maybe not. I don't know. I'll let you answer that.
Well, no, I don't. I
Right.
don't. But you know what? Most of my tattoos are done by artists that are friends of mine.
Right.
But I think more of what I was trying to get at is, like you as a tattoo artist are like, there's so many different people that you are affecting and of their, because a tattoo is a serious thing, because, like for example, I have my neck tattooed. That is, a lot of people think that's a crazy thing to do. But, there's a connection there. There's like a commitment and a statement that, a person's trying to make.
Right.
And a tattoo artist is a part of this, decision. They're getting paid to create the art and everything else. But I mean, I guess I don't know exactly the right way to put it, or it's just, I just feel like there's gotta be just this, I don't know, okay, here's what I think I'm trying to say. You're tattooing people and they're bleeding all over you.
Well,
and you have a wipe, you have a rag.
That's overstating. I don't have like a rubber apron on,
I know.
And I'm like,
but this is the things that I've thought about while getting tattooed. Is like, this is so strange because this dude or this chick or whatever is like, like tattooing me, and they're like wiping off my blood constantly. Yeah. It's like, it just seems like such a it's I don't know. It's much more of a I guess intimate type thing.
Right.
That it's just. But I'm just wondering from your perspective, like, what is it? I mean, is it ever weird? Is there ever like back to the gross thing? Has there ever been any situation or that's just been like, oh man, like this is just like this dude smells like BO or like this is difficult to get through?
I mean, you tattoo for as long as I've been doing it, you're gonna get some stuff like that, But I think there's a certain context to, there's like, like if you asked, and the first thing I think of is the grossest story that ever personally happened to me is like the walk-in shop days. Because that's a different arena than like what I do.
Well, you've that's one thing too. I'd like to touch back to. We'll go back to your shop later because I have some things I wanted to ask you about that. But the shop days, like what kind of crazy things happen? Like just like weird.
Well, I mean, a walk-in shop is just a totally different atmosphere. It's and I mean, I don't even know how much that has changed. From when I started to now, because I haven't been in a walk-in shop atmosphere for a long time, So, but when I was doing it, it was like 95, 96 is about when I started, depending on, what you think is your, I picked up a tattoo machine when I was about 18, maybe 17, 18, somewhere in there. That doesn't mean that's when I started. That's when I started like ruining parts of my friends' bodies. It wasn't like I, picked it up and just had a job. So, but when my first job was at a walk-in shop, and that's where I learned, and it was a great way to do it and a great experience because, I mean, I was like a introverted weirdo art school going to kid from the suburbs, and the shop was in a kind of crazy area of the city. It was just like, I wouldn't go as far as to say shocking, but it was definitely not familiar territory for me, and it ended up being great because I just saw all kinds of stuff that I think maybe people that were in my similar scenario just kind of dismissed as being like weird or unaccepting of, and then you're around it enough, and you're like, it's just people. They're just people like everyone else. Like that guy with the crazy mohawk and whatever, you know what I mean? Just whatever it is, whatever the thing is that's like in the neighborhood, the energy, the people, whatever, you just realize like, yeah, man, there's a lot of people in the world, and like, it's a shame to not be sort of exposed to different things like that. I mean, I think I'd be a totally different person if I didn't, one, get into tattooing, and two, start at a shop like that, you know? Because you're just sort of thrust into this environment, and you're thrust into having to like interact either on a business level or in a like, get out of my shop, you're peeing on the floor, you know, or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
like, those are situations where, you know, your average like cubicle person that works in the suburbs and eats at Panera every morning or for lunch isn't gonna like
well, yeah,
run into,
I mean,
really.
because like the shop you have set up now is like really, really nice, and you control everything basically. It feels more like a woodsman spa or something. It's very like it felt like, I remember there was like, it just felt relaxing, you know. And
I mean, it's different.
It's
now.
not like it's not like a, you know, a tattoo shop where it's like dun, 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 and like people are just like peeing on the floor and stuff. It's like a completely different vibe.
I should mention, you know, there wasn't that much peeing on the floor, but yeah, it's, you know, and as influential and important as that era was to my life and my tattooing and everything, it isn't for me, you know. I think it's a you know, and I think sometimes you say that and people think they like draw these like hard lines with anything creative, especially tattooing, like these like, oh, traditional street shop, whatever, and then like these bougie appointment only, and it's like, it's just tattooing, man. It's like, it doesn't matter. They're both valid. All of it's valid, really. You know, you just it's just like anything else. You have your preferences and ways you like to work, and thankfully the industry, you know, there's pros and cons to everything, but the industry is so widespread now that you can find like a niche, you know. You can do things that weren't really applicable back then when I started, you know. There was maybe 2 places in the city that were like an appointment shop that was maybe on the 2nd floor, you know, that like the closer to the kind of thing like our, you know, my shop is. It just wasn't a thing, and now it's everywhere. I meet people all the time. Oh, how long you been tattooing? Oh, like 2 years. Oh, where do you work? Oh, I got a private studio. I'm booked for 4 years. Like, what? Like, how did that happen? Like, I didn't even begin to even sort of think about saying I knew what I was doing for like, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. You know?
Yeah, it is crazy. They're everywhere. I mean, like when I met you, you were working at Deluxe, which I still like. I went and got. Do you know who Bunny?
Yeah, I tattooed him.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. We had a reunion a little while ago, and I met him again for.
Yeah, nice dude. Yeah. He's the one that did my hand. With
I did
Sienna.
his hand. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
6 degrees.
That's so cool. Part of what I like to do on the podcast is entertain people.
Yeah.
And so, do you have anything funny that's happened? Like.
Well, I mean, you know, the gross stuff is like walk-in shop days again. You know, I think like when you have an appointment-only shop and you got a bit of a waiting list, you know, you don't really run into someone like coming in hammered or what, you know, they're like waited a long time, they've thought their idea out. It's not some spur-of-the-moment thing they decided while they were bar hopping. That's more like some walk-in shop stuff, like when I first started, where you would run into that kind of stuff. Where you're like, oh man, you know, like as soon as you start, you like realize, oh God, this guy's hammered, you know, what was it like? I should have noticed, you know. I remember I don't know if I should say the tattoo in case he's listening.
Nah, you don't have to do just
but I was doing a tattoo of unknown imagery, and he's laying down on the massage table, right? It's like, I don't know, like his ankle or something like that, so his head's as far away from me as it can be, and he's like face down on the massage table. And I should have known, because I think he had like those tumblers you get like from a ball game or something, you know, like the giveaway, like when you finish the beer, you take the like, you know, like they're like, oh, I haven't been drinking, and they got like 8 empty tumblers. Like, right, you just stopped at Bed Bath & Beyond before you came here and bought a set of Cubs tumblers that are caked in and Budweiser.
Oh my God.
So I'm doing it, and like he's moving around like crazy, right? And I'm pretty patient, but I was like, hey man, you know, like I'm trying to do the lines, gotta hold still or whatever, and then I'd start in again. It was a dinky little thing.
Remember, I'm permanently tattooing your body.
Right. Remember, this is your bright idea. And so it's just like over and over, you know, just jostling around this and that. And I'm like, yeah, are you doing okay, man? You know, like you're moving all, I'm fine. So fourth time or so, I like just stop. I'm like, dude, what's going on up there? And I look, and the moving around, he had been throwing up in the tumbler. It was like full to the top. It was all over the massage table. And I was like, yeah, man, you're not okay. You know, like that adds up to not okay. Like when I ask if you're okay and you have a tumbler like full of puke, like that's not okay. That's probably the grossest thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, that I'm gonna have to edit that out. That's a little bit. No.
Well, that's why I asked.
No, I'm just kidding. That is really gross, man.
I mean, and I should add that stuff just doesn't. I was probably 19 years old.
Did you finish the tattoo then?
I mean, it was dinky. I was pretty much done.
Oh, okay,
you know,
okay.
And it was just to that point where I'm like, hey man, you gotta hold still. Like, I'm never gonna finish this thing. And I look up and it's just a mess.
Ugh.
And the whole time, like, I'm fine. You know, like
that's
terrible.
Really
and
gross.
that kind of stuff, in general, is like, that's one of my biggest things that I can't stomach. Is like, you know, bodily fluid mess. Like. Even if I'm like walking down the street and I see that I have in a corner by a bar and I catch it, just sitting there. You know what I mean? From like the night before, I'm like, oh, God, it's like seared into my memory. And then inevitably I'm like on my way to lunch or something. I'm like, God dang it! Like I gotta wait till dinner to maybe.
My dog got sick recently and he had diarrhea on our kitchen floor, and it was really gross. And then I bent over to try to clean it up. And I started gagging, ran to the bathroom, and just violently started throwing up. That's
a double whammy.
And my wife had to clean it up because I have like really bad gag reflex.
Yeah. Like it's never made me do that, but
I have it really bad.
Well, anyway, shifting gears. Before everyone has now shut the podcast off because they're ill.
They're going.
Maybe you should edit that out.
So one thing I was going to ask you about was like when you did my first tattoo. Actually. Every one of my tattoos, well, I'll go back to this. I get asked all the time. One of the most common things I get asked is if I'm a tattoo artist. And I'm not, obviously. But I get asked that all the time because I have a lot of tattoos. They assume, or sometimes someone comes up to me, hey, what do you do? I go, I'm an artist. They immediately assume tattoo artist, right?
Yeah. See, I never get that.
And I have to explain all the time.
I never get that.
Really? Yeah, you don't really look like a tattoo artist.
I don't look like a tattoo artist.
But
I look like an everyday schmo that nobody wants to know what he does for a living.
You kind of look like a Brooklyn bartender.
Oh man, that's worse. Okay. That's like so much worse. Edit that out.
You got like the flannel, and you got the you have sleeves. You got like
lots of people have flannels that aren't New York bartenders, man.
No, you don't really look like that. But
good save. That's a way to sweep that under the rug.
You don't really look like that.
That was just something totally unrelated. I decided to say.
But you don't look like a tattoo, like a typical, like. I don't know. There's like a certain look that a lot of tattoo artists have. You definitely don't have that.
I look like a man. That's it.
Yeah.
Just a guy.
You look like you like to fish. You look like a guy who likes to fish.
Let's go with that. That is way better than a bartender.
You look like
what did you say? A Brooklyn bartender?
Like
I would have accepted bartender from like anywhere
just
else
not
on the
like
you look like a bartender at a supper club in Sheboygan. Like that I would have been like, hell yeah.
In Appleton, Wisconsin.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, at least in Appleton you'd be fishing, and bartending.
Right after my shift. But I would be fishing the lake that's right behind the bar after my shift at Monkeys.
I get asked all the time that, and then I also get asked, do I design my own tattoos? And no. And people are so confused by that. But the reason I don't design my own tattoos is because I don't really like my own artwork. You know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what you mean. I got my first and second tattoo were ones I drew, and it's really kind of beyond me as the years have gone by as to why I had that mentality early on, because I feel like I've never had that kind of confidence in my own stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know what on earth I was just like, oh yeah, I'm only gonna get stuff that I design. Like, what kind of ego trip was that?
Yeah, I mean,
but I got it covered up already. Like immediately.
I've
was
seen my art tattooed on people before too, which I'm talking like a caricature illustrated cover I did for Guitar Player magazine.
Yeah.
Some guy sent me. He got a sleeve. I mean, I'm proud of the artwork I did, but
who was it? Who was the?
It was like Santana and Jimmy Page and you know, just a bunch of like guitar players. Like 5 or 6 of them.
Never heard of them. Those guys play guitar.
Yeah, and but it's like it was weird seeing that on somebody. It's like, oh, you know. And so I've never I knew right away that, you know, I'm proud of the work I do. There's some paintings I've done that I'm like, oh, I really like that one. But ultimately, I wouldn't want my own artwork on me. It just feels weird. It doesn't feel right.
Well, right, because you're critical, right?
Yeah.
We're critical
and also,
about
and like you said, it does seem weird. Like, oh, I got my own artwork all over me. It's like,
right. I'm awesome. Just ask
like,
me.
Hey, you know, my favorite thing to do when I jerk off is look in the mirror. You know, it's like the weirdest thing in the world. But like, so. One of the coolest things I found about you is like when I came up to you and I explained to you what you know, what I was thinking and style wise, like what I kind of liked and everything. You're like, okay, cool. And then I came back, like, I don't know what it was, like a week or so later, and you showed it to me and you had measured my arm and everything, and it was like exactly 100% what I wanted. And it was like, oh, that's awesome. Like I was thinking when I came in, like, you know, man, I hope I don't, have to be like, oh, I don't really like this and whatever else. But I just liked it. I liked the design.
I'm always prepared for that, though, too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm not the
sure
kind of
you
person
are,
that's just like I wouldn't be. Yeah, I mean, to this date, for as long as I've been doing it, if it's a client that I've never worked with before and they're coming in to get it, and I usually have it drawn for the day of, people afford me that luxury, which is great. You know, sometimes I can read that they need to see it ahead of time, and I'll do that. Or if it's like huge and complicated, I'll do it ahead of time, and just to save me and the client that, you know, if there's like a bazillion components to it or something, it's worth seeing it ahead of time. But 90% of the time, they're seeing it the day they're going to get tattooed, and every single time I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go show them this drawing, and I get the butterflies, and I kind of have this drum roll in my head where they're going to be like, no, I'm not getting that. Like, start over, you know.
I mean, every single time you did one for me, there was never any changes. I was just like, that's exactly what I was. And here's the thing, I'm a fan of your work. I like your work. So as long as it's like, you know, like if it was like some weird random color idea, might be kind of like, I don't know if I like that idea. Yeah. But you always nailed it. And what I was going to ask you about that is, what's your process when you? So if someone gives you a design, obviously you're like if it's the arm, you've got to understand how it's going to flow on the arm, where certain bits of the image are going to be on the biceps and that sort of a thing. Yeah. So what's your process when you're starting like something like a sleeve before you even get to the tattoo part? Well,
I mean, I have a consultation with the person and just talk about where their head's at, you know, what kind of, and I mean, clients are so different. Sometimes people come in with a folder full of stuff, you know, imagery, reference material, all this kind of thing. Other times they just have like a loose notion. I think my comfort zone, or at least what makes the work come together a little bit more in an organized way, falls somewhere in the middle. There's enough information where I've got like a platform to get going on it, but then sometimes when it's too much, you end up editing out so much of that binder of stuff they gave you that, you know, you're kind of back down to the person that's just like got a basic idea. So there's really like that sweet spot where it's enough to go on, but not like overwhelming, you know, because I think a lot of times when people are like, oh, I'm going to get a sleeve, right? It's my whole arm. Like I could put a bazillion things in there. I'm getting my entire arm. But really when you see it on paper, like what that space looks like sort of unfurled, it can get cluttered so quick. You know what I mean? Like if you're, you know, they're like, here's 10 flower types I want, and then these are the like 80 different animals that I want to put in there, and I'll do my best to have it make sense. But I find that like the projects that that I feel really work with the body the most, it's down to like a couple things. You know what I mean? Like if someone's just like, I want, you know, a wolf and a rabbit and a fish and a dog and my cat portrait, you know, and all this stuff, and I'm just kind of like, man, I could do a sleeve with like the wolf and the rabbit. Like that's plenty. You know what I mean? Like that would be badass. Like the whole, you can make the head of the wolf big and like all the teeth and all this kind of stuff, but you know, the more animals you pack in there and flowers or whatever, the less mileage you can get out of each one, you know? So those are kind of things without putting too much pressure on the person that I just talk to them about, you know, when I'm having a consultation. Because I don't want to like flat out shoot down someone's vision, but there's just things that work and things that don't. Or they work with like, you know, the more you have to compromise, you know, like, yeah, it'll work, but each animal's gonna be dinky or whatever, you know, like, and then I'll kind of throw out the idea, and sometimes they never weren't really thinking about it, but might be receptive, where I'm like, hey, let's just do that wolf and that rabbit, like that's enough, like we can do something cool with that. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, you know, like that could be cool, and you know, it's like it's like any composition, you know, less can be more a lot of times.
Probably I mean, it's different probably with someone like me because I'm an artist, but like most people coming in and get tattoos aren't really artists themselves, you know?
Right.
And they don't like understand like there's got to be a flow with the anatomy. You know, you want it to like flow with your arm and your body and and work well with that. So that's like an added kind of not really complication, but just
it's a complication.
You know, it is a complication. Like because you know, just to think about how you're going to design like a wolf, for example, like what's the best way to make it flow with this person's arm, and like,
well, and that's the thing too,
especially if someone's got like really small arms and they want tons of stuff on it. And it's
I've often referred to it, you know, when you're talking about an animal, is that if you don't do the composition right, you're gonna have the animal eating its own tail. You know what I mean? Like they want stuff to wrap around, but it's like, all right, you want to show, say, a deer with like huge antlers or something like that,
and then the antlers are gonna wrap around.
The antlers are gonna clank into each other, you know, on the inside of the arm while the deer's sniffing its own butt. You know, it's like not gonna work. So you have to get creative with like foreshortening, because one of the significant differences between sitting down and doing something that's just a composition on paper that isn't tattoo related versus a half sleeve or something is those two sides, you know, your left and right side of the page are gonna meet. You know what I mean? You don't ever think about that when you're doing a painting. The composition is one view, but with something that wraps around, I do it all the time where I'll start kind of forgetting that notion, and I'll start drawing something, and then I get to the other side of the page. I'm like, oh wait, like these two sides are gonna touch on the other side. You know, usually on like the back of the forearm or something like that. So then I'll have to like kind of go back or actually I had a client that made 2 life casts of arms. It was really neat. He was a fabricator. He did a lot of fiberglass work, and I was like, hey man, Nick, you seem like a guy that would have like an arm laying around like in your studio, you know, like I just thought for like a mannequin arm or something like that. And he's like, yeah, let me see what I got. And he came back like 2 weeks later, and he had done 2 life casts of the guy he works with, of his arms, and he mounted them on pedestals, and they're like white enamel.
That's awesome.
And so like if I'm really struggling, I just take the drawing and and he's like an average size guy, so it kind of works out, you know, like more or less I can get the idea, and I'll wrap them around the actual.
That's awesome.
I mean, you know, if there's anybody that does tattoos that's even listening to this, to be like, yeah, dummy, get an iPad, like you could do, you know what I mean? I'm like, I got a ceramic arm, isn't that rad? They're like, yeah, I got an app that's like arm tat, and I can do all that stuff, you know.
Is there really apps like that?
Yeah,
I've never even heard of.
See, they're all doing that stuff.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it's not like no one's impressed, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I like it. I think it's cool. Now I got 2 arms like that.
I think it's cool. I think that's an awesome idea.
But there's all kinds of shit like that where you can do a 3D modeling, and you can see the arm all the way around and put your almost draw the tattoo like you're drawing it on someone.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
But I don't know, you know. And I might be talking out of my ass. That's why I'm here, right? It's because I don't have Skype. That's why we're like actually face to face, you know.
Hey, I like this way better. I wish I could do this more like this on purpose. Yeah. Or, you know, from now on. But unfortunately, I don't really have a studio prepared for that yet. But that's really interesting, though. That makes a lot of sense. So, the other thing I was thinking of is like when you're, so let's just say we'll stick with the wolf and rabbit thing. Is a lot of this the design of the characters, is it all just out of your head, or are you gathering tons of references of wolves and everything, and just maybe it's probably both, or
a bit of both? Yeah, I would say.
What the heck?
I would say that most of the time I've got some kind of reference material, but there's a trap with that, right? Because it's tempting to just end up drawing what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes sense. As artists, you're kind of you're sort of trained, like from life drawing days. Like you draw what you see. Granted, it's like a flat image on a computer screen or whatever. Or like when you're thinking like, oh, I want to do this dynamic pose, and I'm looking through references, and I'm like, God dang it, that's like perfect. But I can't let myself do it because I just feel like I'm cheating.
No, that makes sense.
Cheating myself and just like.
But I mean, part of what you're doing is because I mean, I understand what you're saying, but like, for example, if I'm doing a caricature illustration of somebody, obviously I have to look at references of them.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm exaggerating it. I'm taking it to another place. So in a way, you're probably doing some exaggeration.
Yeah.
You have to like kind of characterize the wolf,
right.
Obviously, right?
Yeah.
And besides, in my opinion, like I'm not a big fan of realistic looking things tattooed on people. I just think it looks kind of like, I don't know. It just feels flat to me. Like it's more interesting when there's like a dynamic to it, and there is some exaggeration and character push.
Yeah.
Like there's a difference between like having like this badass wolf that's coming around and just like its nose is just slightly longer and its nose, that's way cooler looking than just a wolf head.
Yeah. I think for me the reference stuff, I try to be good at not just doing the picture because it's not fulfilling. You know what I mean? There's been moments like I'll sit down and I'm drawing and like in my head, I feel like I'm switching it up enough and changing things that need to be changed, and then like I'm 3/4 of the way done, I'm like, God damn it, I'm just drawing this freaking reference,
Yeah.
So a lot of times what I'll do then is I'll look through a bunch of stuff and then kind of like log more like the essence of what makes that thing look like that thing, because there's accuracy involved too. You don't want to make it stiff and boring and, like you said, just like, oh, it looks like a portrait of a wolf or whatever. You want to like add some style, and it's easier for me to then just like put it away and not have it in front of me, and then I can like loosen up a little bit, because in addition to it ends up looking just like the photo, there's like a total like stiff, like I can just feel it being like just kind of boring and stiff, and like I'm just imitating, right? Versus like I'm not really putting any myself into this now, and so then I like put the references away. I've got them in my back pocket for when I need them, but I find I'll need them for maybe more like, do I have the ears too close to the eyes? Do they need to be like further back on the head? Things like that would like, they make a wolf look like a wolf, whether it's a wacky cartoon one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
There's things that like, if you're exaggerating or not exaggerating, like you can tell when someone knows how to draw, because no matter how wacky it gets, the essence of that wolf is still there, right? They don't have like huge ears that are like twice as big as their body, because then eventually it gets to a point where it doesn't look like a wolf anymore. And someone's like, well, what the hell animal is that?
And that's what I mean. You have to caricature it a little bit. You have to capture that character.
It's tough. It's a really tough balance, because you don't want to imitate a photo, at least I don't, and then you gotta also like maintain the sort of like the essence of that animal, like it's just about like observation, like you really have to, if you can observe stuff in real life, that's great. I mean, that's a lot harder to come by for most people, like especially living in a city where you're gonna go look at, you can go to the zoo, I guess, and that's valid, but it's a lot of these steps that you take that just like you want to kind of honor that. And it'll just look off too. You know what I mean? If you don't have it right, if you're like doing an eagle and you got like a stabby little pointy beak, it doesn't look like an eagle anymore. You know what I mean? And you can be like, well, that's what I feel inside. It doesn't matter. Like, who gives a shit? Like, you're supposed to draw an eagle.
That's funny I think you probably know this. I'm like sort of a shark freak. Like, I just love sharks. But that's one of the things, I've hardly ever seen a good shark tattoo.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is, but almost every time I see a shark tattoo, I'm like, that doesn't even look right.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't even give the shark it's the right kind of teeth it has. You know,
Yeah.
I've noticed like that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Well, it's
like
part of
it's like,
it's part of being hyper aware of your surroundings. Well, not your surroundings necessarily, because we're not swimming with sharks, but like just like observing. To me, that's the kind of stuff that whether you're great at life drawing or not. I was just talking about this yesterday with one of my clients. It teaches you to understand those the relationships of the components of what makes the thing look like the thing, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying like, oh yeah, that's not what shark teeth look like.
Yeah.
Right. You can make the teeth as stylistic as you want, but as soon as you stray too far from that anatomy, someone that knows, that's like spent time looking at sharks is going to know. Like I think of perfect examples are things like I was kind of saying before, where you're drawing a shark and say it's more of a profile, right? And you're drawing like a great white. Like that eye and the corner of the mouth, right, have a certain space between them, you know, or how far the eye is from the point of the snout, or how far it is from the front or corner of the mouth.
If it's not right, it won't look like a great white.
And you can get like super wacky, but it's not gonna, like if you put the eye, I do so many like birds all the time, and that's a huge thing that I always have to retrain myself with birds, is like what makes a lot of them I found that sort of captures the essence of what it looks like is those little relationships of like an eye to the corner of the beak. You know, does the joint where the bottom and lower jaw meet, is that way past the eye? Is it right under the eye?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. And that's different on every bird. You know, you got birds that are like, it's 4 inches behind the eye, and then there's ones where it's in front of it, and like little things like that. And it's if you don't nail that, you can make it as styly as you want, but it's not going to look like. It's like,
it reminds me of the cover for Jaws. I mean, it's the cover for Jaws, the poster, and it's like the biggest shark movie of all time. And you got the woman swimming in the water and this giant shark head coming up, and it's not a fucking great white shark. How do you? I've gotten in arguments with friends of mine about this. It's like, dude, it's supposed to be like this epic monster movie, and so I'm like, but I don't care about that. It's not a great white shark. Great white shark have big triangle teeth. They're very specific mouth.
I can't picture I can picture the cover. I can't picture the
It has
teeth.
like these scrawny, like crazy, almost like sand tiger shark teeth in a way.
Little stabby eyes.
Eyes are in the wrong place and everything else. I've even gone through the trouble of finding real great whites with the exact same angle and sending it to my friends. That's
sending
what
it to Steven
like,
Spielberg.
well, this was done in the 70s. It's like, I don't care. It doesn't look like a great white.
Right, because people didn't know how to observe and
It's
paint
like,
things properly in the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. For your drawings, when you set them up, like, you're working on like a sleeve or whatever, how much do you like give yourself a certain amount of time that you're going to spend? Well, that's Sienna, everybody. Do you give yourself a certain?
That wasn't me.
Yeah. But do you give yourself a certain amount of time? Like I can't spend more than 3 hours on this. Or...
It varies from project to project, and I base it on just experience. There's stuff where I'm like, okay, this is kind of unfamiliar territory. Maybe it's got a lot of components to it. Maybe it's just big. It's just a big drawing. I'll give myself extra time. Most of the time, I do them. I don't know if people that have tattoos from me would appreciate it or not, but like I do them like the morning before.
Yeah,
like,
I remember like asking you, like I was so excited I wanted to see, and you're like, oh, I haven't done it yet, and I'm like, dude, I'm coming in like tomorrow. I remember thinking that, like, because I mean I'm like I would have already had it drawn by now. Like,
I don't know, man. It's that like it's.
That's
I would
the way
say
you do
I
it.
work good under pressure, but it's pressure that doesn't even need to exist, right? It's completely self-imposed pressure.
That's funny.
But I think part of it is lazy, right? Just being lazy and procrastinating, and then part of it has just turned into this work mode where I think I was saying this earlier when we started. It's just like you have this. It's a deadline that I've made for myself, but I just think like, man, no matter what happens, like I got to do this tattoo on someone by 12:30 tomorrow, and if I get an hour's sleep or no sleep or whatever, then that's on me, but it's gonna get done. And I will say, like, I don't end up having, I've never canceled on anyone because I'm like, I waited to the last minute and pooch the drawing, you know, like it doesn't happen.
That would be like getting hired to do an illustration for, you know, like someone like Time, and not getting it done.
Right. I wasn't inspired.
Yeah, it's like you don't, as a professional, you just don't do that.
Yeah.
Like you can't afford to do that.
You don't want
a reputation.
There's two different like mentalities I have with tattoo work and with just what I call like personal or like outside of work art. They're just two different approaches. Like tattooing, I just don't fuck around with it. Like I have an appointment, I stick to it, I get it done. You know, and there's a lot you could argue about that. It's just a system that I've done for so long. You know, I don't have any excuse to not have it done sooner or spend more time with it.
Yeah.
But I think I've grown to like that, like, fuck it, here goes. Like, it's got to be done. You know, if you give me 2 months to do a tattoo drawing, like, I'm going to do it the night before or the morning of. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit there and draw it and redraw it and draw it again and redraw it. Like, I'll do that during that time in the morning. Like, I'll sit there sometimes, I'll spend 2 hours, right, doing a drawing, and I've erased so much that I'm like, I don't have anything. I've actually sent my wife pictures.
I've done this before too.
I've sent my wife pictures, right? Like I'll be like, yeah, I've been working for 2 hours. Want to check it out? And it's like a blank tracing of like a sleeve. And then I start going into like meltdown mode, right? Because I'm like, what did I do to myself now? I got to have this drawing done. Sat down to do it. I'm not even like exaggerating on time wise. I'll be like 2 hours in and it's not that I've been staring at a blank page. I've been drawing and been like, well, that sucks. Erase that. Yeah. Start drawing it again. And like, I'm talking basic like gesture.
Yeah.
Not like I've done all these details.
Yeah, just
and
trying
then I
to
erase
get the idea and you're just.
Yeah, just like, okay, right. We'll stick with the wolf thing. Like I'll draw the head and I'm like, do I even want the head there? You know, like, so
yeah.
A big part of how I work or how I've learned to work is from the moment the person comes in with the moment the person comes in with the consultation, like that instant, as I'm sitting there talking to him, I've like logged it in my brain, like where I'm thinking about, and I'll tell them, you know, like we discuss it, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm thinking like, you know, maybe the head would go here, a paw here, this and that. And if they're receptive and that's what they're picturing, then I'm just like logging all that information. Even if the tattoo's like weeks down the road, I'll just think like, okay, and it's all like at any given moment, any day, whatever, I've got like something in my mental flat file that I'm like tooling around in my head. Like it's kind of annoying in a way, but like, I'll be sitting there like say I've outlined a tattoo already on a client and I'm doing the shading and I'm having a session and it's going like well enough and I'm getting close to the end of the session, work day's about done. I would say I could sit there for like 2 hours of that tattoo while I'm tattooing, thinking about the drawing I've got to do when I get home. You know what I mean? Like there's always like something processing.
That's the same thing with me on deadlines too. Like a lot of times I've got, you know, one deadline's due before another, but while I'm working on the other one, I'm almost like drawing the other thing in my mind. I'm thinking about it
completely. And it's like a busy restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's stuff that's like you're like
we gotta get this order out.
Yeah,
and like,
you're like it's like being a prep cook. You know, you like the components are starting to come together, but you really haven't like cooked anything yet. You know what I mean? But it's like it's all there and ready when the person orders it. You've got like all the components ready to go and just like throw in the pot. So it's like
I think it's a common thing. You know, just I mean, even what you were talking about, like you know, last minute kind of doing it. Like when I was talking to Son Little a couple weeks ago. Even him, like he just recorded a song with Taj Mahal's daughter, and it's an amazing song called "Goddamn," and it's so good. And but he was talking about that, like if you give me like, you know, if you say I have a week to do something, I'm gonna use all that time, you know, to get this thing done. But if all of a sudden you're like, oh no, actually, you know what? Well, you know what? Now that I think about it, you got 3 weeks. He's like, guess what? The song's not getting done. Like, I'm not,
right.
Like, I would rather be like, hey, I've got 2 days to like figure out how to write this riff or whatever I'm going to do. But I think that kind of works. I bet you just with almost any kind of art form, you know, I mean, it's probably different for everybody, but I mean, I can definitely relate to that, what you're saying completely. Just like, because it's one thing to being someone that's an artist, whether you're drawing or painting or whatever you're doing, or even poetry, you're doing your own thing. But when it comes to like, there's a gun to your head, there's a deadline, it changes everything. Yeah. Like your thought process.
You gotta think on your toes.
Sometimes
man.
I can't sleep at night because I can't stop thinking about this job I'm working on.
It's the dumbest system, right? Yeah. You could be getting a perfect night's sleep every night, but I'm the same way. I'll do it in the morning, and then I basically don't sleep because I'm stirring that idea around in my head all night.
Yep.
And I'm like, I should just be up drawing it, but I'm like, I just can't. I'm like, I got till 5 a.m. Like, I'm just gonna get a good night's sleep, and it's not a good night's sleep. It's a terrible night's sleep. Get up at 5 a.m. Draw till whenever. But again, that's like there's definitely projects where I'm like, this one's gonna be tricky. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get crazy and do this one the night before. Or there's ones that it'll be like, maybe a day or two. If I'm doing it on like a Monday, I might spend How
does your wife handle the deadlines and the different? I mean, is she?
I've gotten better about it over the years. I've learned to strike a better balance between work and life. I've gone through those phases of like 4 hours of sleep, 2 hours of sleep every night for like weeks, and it just rots your brain, man. There's people
it's not good.
There's people that do it. I like talking about this too because I don't know if it's entirely true of people that say you're looking at Instagram and you just think like, man, they produce so much stuff, they must never sleep or this or that. And then I wonder like, well, is that true, or is that just a highlight reel, or am I just making that scenario up? But I know that I've been in that position where I am like
just pumping stuff out,
and it's like I really love that enthusiasm that I get from the momentum and everything like that, and having a bunch of big projects to work on in a week. But I can't do it nonstop, man. I could do it for like 2 weeks and really enjoy that sort of like one project kind of fires up the next project and then and so on and so forth. But then I crash. You know what I mean? I would say 2 weeks is probably the most. There was a point when I did it for like months, and
it's crazy.
I have this very distinct reminder of I was getting ready for bed for my 2 hours of sleep. It's like 5 a.m. I'm gonna go to bed for 2 hours, get up and finish the drawing, just to get some shut eye. And I go to the bathroom to like brush my teeth, and I look in the mirror. I'm like, I look like a fucking zombie. Like I was like dark circle. Like it kind of like shocked me. I just hadn't taken stock of just my health or anything, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this isn't worth it. To what? To be like better at tattooing? Like I can get better at tattooing without everything else suffering. And I'm speaking for myself.
Oh, no,
there's people that seem to have a metabolism. Again, I don't know if I'm making this up, where I'm like, man, how do they never sleep? But there's people that can just get by on like 3 hours of sleep.
I know some people like that, and I don't understand it.
I kind of thought you were like that.
Well, I mean, I used to like do all-nighters and stuff like that, but I sort of realized how to plan my deadlines better. I mean, there's some jobs I get. I got a job just this week that was crazy. I had done a pitch for a movie poster, and for a Christmas movie that's going to come out this next year. And so I painted the movie poster. Pretty happy with it. Turned out pretty good. The face was kind of weird because I had to make up the expression. They didn't really have a good expression of this actress. So that was really a challenge. But then, and that was like 2 months ago. They contacted me just the other day, and they're like, "Hey, the post." So what happens is like it's a pitch poster. So I only get paid a certain amount. It's not the greatest, but if the poster gets chosen, I'm going to make a lot more money, which is nice. That's what we want,
right.
So they contacted me and said, hey, that poster you painted a couple months ago, turns out that the studio really likes it a lot, but they hate her expression, and they'd like her face turn a different direction. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
I love when they say that stuff, like it's the easiest change.
Yeah.
Like you've drawn a woman head and a hand. And they're like, I love everything about it except the head and the hand. Can we change that? Like that's the whole thing. Like I'll change anything else.
Yeah, and that's what they said was like, so they contacted me Wednesday night, and they needed the the head and hair.
Right.
And this is painted very realistically.
Yeah.
They need the final a
Just
new head.
Turn it a little bit.
Yeah. They needed a new head by noon the next day.
Yeah.
So that was yesterday.
Now I wonder if they just don't know, right?
Well, no.
Or,
to be
or
honest,
they don't care.
To be honest, I agreed with it because when I did the first one, I didn't like it, but that's what they gave me to do. And the new reference was way better.
Yeah.
So I was like, it looks so much better now. It's way better. But it's like, dude, you guys
You
are giving
saved
me
Christmas, basically.
Yeah.
Is that what the movie's about?
All I can say is it's got Anna Kendrick in it and Bill Hader, and it's a Christmas movie.
I love Bill Hader.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but hopefully I can share it sometime. But anyways, that's the thing though. It's just like, I wasn't planning on working really late Wednesday night.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I have to, do that kind of a thing, and then get up extra early so I can give myself at least 6 hours. I think I was like, I think I can paint her head in 6 hours. I think, so
right.
It's kind of like I hope so.
Right.
But yeah, I typically don't really try to do over. I try to, and I've got 2 teenage daughters, and I have a 1.5-year-old baby, and so
who we've heard.
Yeah. So I try like right now we're doing this at night, but normally I don't do much at night anymore. It's mostly just like family time. Weekend is family time. So I try to keep my schedule. So it's just like basically I work till 5, sometimes 6, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to do that though. I used to do like crazy all-nighters for deadlines.
Yeah. See, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that because that's like I don't have that because I'm then tattooing the shit I just spent all night drawing. So you roll right into like phase 2 of this project you spent either all morning or all night. It's not like, oh, I did the tattoo, time to relax, or did the tattoo drawing, time to relax. It's like, no, I did the tattoo drawing, time to tattoo it, spend just as much or more time tattooing it.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, for me, I just, like I said, I just try to plan out, like, when I take on a job, I think about, can I do this job in the amount of time that they're asking, and is it worth what they're paying me? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I have to kind of just balance that out.
Yeah.
But before we get going, because we've been talking for like an hour and 20 minutes already.
Oh.
Yeah, goes fast, right?
Right.
But I wanted to talk about your shop too, because I noticed I looked on your online and I read that you are only doing black and white now.
Yeah.
And
I did that. I decided to do that. I feel like it's been a couple years now. I slowly, not even that slowly, phased out.
So did you kind of get to a point with your work where you've got enough reputation and waiting list and you've got your own shop that you run basically with Harlan.
Yeah.
That you basically are at that point, which is really nice. I would assume as a tattoo artist to kind of just control everything to what is good for you personally, and you personally love black and white.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? That's what I love doing. That's what I'm going to do. Is that kind of what it was like?
Well, I don't think the catalyst was feeling like I could get away with it. I mean, sort of like. But
I mean, just doing what you love. Like this is what I love.
It was like, in a nutshell, it was to alleviate stress. Like doing color was just stressing me out, man. Oh, okay. For like any number of reasons. Like just, it was weird, man. I felt like I was actually like, what's the word? Like I was just getting worse at it or something. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was like devolving my understanding of color, where I would find I was getting even more and more frustrated, where I would say I'm coloring something in, or I'm trying to pick a palette before I start, and I'm like looking at this box of like pigment and almost like a very real feeling of kind of like just going blank. Where I'm just like, I have no fucking idea what to color this. I mean, there's certain things that are obvious. If someone's like, I want the rose red, then you're like, red, no big deal, you know? But if it's just some like weird thing I made up, like some character or something that doesn't really have a template for how it's supposed to be colored, and the person's just like, I don't care, whatever, you know? And then I'm just like, great, you know?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it doesn't even work if they're like, oh, well, they do give me an idea, because then their idea of like periwinkle blue and mine is totally different.
Periwinkle.
You know, and they're looking in the mirror like, this is going to heal a lot later, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But it was just stressing me out. It was stressing me out, and my first love was always, like when I even, as a kid, decided that artwork was something I liked, and you know, it was always like number 2 pencil, man, and white paper.
You're black and I'm very familiar with your color work, and I always thought it was really good. But your black and white work is really awesome, though. It's I don't know. There's definitely
there's a lot to think about with that too, man.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like just
for me
'cause you've
personally,
stripped it down,
my favorite thing as well. Excuse me. My favorite thing is working in values, thinking about values.
And that's all it is when you're doing black and gray.
And there's my favorite type of painting is limited color. I like when there's just a little bit maybe, or you're just kind of being subtle with it. Because it just feels to me more. There's more of like an atmosphere kind of feel or a mood. You know, I personally paint with most of the time. When I'm painting in oils, I paint with a Zorn palette, which is just 4 colors, just black, white, yellow ochre, and either cadmium red or like a alizarin crimson. And with just that limited palette, you can do so much. But there's like this mood to it,
right?
And in my thinking of painting, no matter what, if I'm doing digital or whatever, traditional, the number one thing that I'm thinking about is like soft edges, light, shadow, and values. That's it. The color is kind of, it's important because you got to think about temperature and that sort of a thing. But I'm never trying to like copy color, like get it exact, like from a reference. You know, it's more about the values and what I'm doing with that. You know.
Well, when I do my
I think it's the most important.
I do them in colored pencil, and it's interesting because I'll post pictures of my tattoo drawings, and sometimes people will comment on the color because they're in color, just colored pencil. It's just what I happen to use. Like graphite's just too smudgy and messy. But I just grab one, right? And it's just the value. Like I have to start light just because if I start dark, it's harder to erase. And I erase a ton because I don't know what I'm doing half the time. So I just start light. Say I've done one with orange. Like, okay, well, what's the next darkest one I've got here that'll show up over the orange? Like, I don't know, it's red. So then I start doing it in red. And then maybe there's another component to it. And I'm like, well, I want to be able to tell these two things apart. So I'll use like a light green for this one. Well, what do I got? I got a dark turquoise to make dark on top of that. Like that's all it is. And someone goes, I love the colors you picked. I'm like, it's just value. I just think of the value. I'm not thinking about the color. Only maybe awesome. In as much as like the two components have a different, like a warm and a cool or something like that, just to separate them a little bit. But it's just about value. I've been trying to do that more and more with my pen and ink too, just like really pushing the contrast and the soft edge thing. Yeah. It's real easy to just have everything hard edged with a pen and ink because you're doing with the pen. Yeah. And I have one that I was working on recently and it was driving me nuts. Like even though it's a pen and ink and it has this outline, I totally just like made these little around the outline to just fuzz it a little. It's super subtle. Yeah. Not even like crazy sketchy or anything, and I just found it so much more appealing, you know, to just have it not this hard line, even though it was the outline. Yeah, I mean, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Like, when I do a lot of critiques and teaching and everything, and the one thing I find myself saying over and over and over again when my soft edges, but like in my portrait work, like because I'm trying to teach realistic painting techniques. And there are no hard edges. Right. I mean, in illustration, in design, and different things like that, you can do you can do whatever you want. Right. But if you're trying to learn how to do like a realistic painting, like never ever, like hair coming to the scalp should always be soft. There's never a hard ever. And that's one of the things I know. As soon as I look at a painting, I see that, and I'm like, oh, it drives me nuts. I took a painting class about 3-4 years ago now, and it was really, really basic stuff, and it was leaning towards doing landscape painting. We kind of did everything was sort of like a landscape or something. No, not plein air, but all the sort of subject matter was landscape. And I think it was just like a spatial thing to do foreground, middle ground, background. They just a lot of barns with mountains in the background, that kind of thing. And that was the one thing they would always come around as you were doing the painting. They're like, you got to soften that edge. You know, you'd have like a barn roof and just like this razor tight line. And you're just like, you think that's it because you know, like, well, that's a hard edge. It's
but
a
then it
roof
just
or
pops
something.
out and it's
and then the just one little brush stroke over there to fuzz it a little bit. And you're like, oh, it's just so much more appealing, you know? Yeah, so I think about that a lot. I mean, it's hard to do with like tattoos, really.
Yeah, tattoos is way different with it. So are you still doing a lot of fishing and stuff? Yeah. So I know that's like, I mean, I love to fish, and I always like...
Yeah, fishing, I was just fishing in northern Minnesota in Ely, and bird watching. I've become
fishing and bird watching.
Very avid bird watcher. And then I did this as a kid so much, but through Instagram, I've gotten a lot more into, all these kids on Instagram, it's called herping, which is herpetology. So like looking for reptiles and amphibians.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so like I've just through looking for through profiles on Instagram of these kids that are like finding like the coolest stuff. That I loved that stuff. And I still, you know, I've done it into my adulthood, but then like bird watching kind of took over. I spent tons of time fishing, but I've been going out like specific areas to look for like specific species of snakes and things like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty rad, man. I found like I've targeted some stuff and like went out and found it too. It's great.
That's awesome.
Like, it's been cool to see like all the stuff that, you know, people ask like, oh, where do you find this? I'm like, I don't know, you just go to the burbs and you got to hunt around, you know?
I'm super excited because I only get to go fishing maybe twice a year. But my brother lives in North Wisconsin and he has a pontoon now. And there's these lakes up there that we love it's called 3 Lakes, but it's like more like 15.
Yeah.
You know.
My dad lives on 3. And,
oh, really?
On Little Fork and 3
Lakes.
Oh,
that's awesome.
I was just up there. I went there before.
Isn't that place great?
Yeah. There's 28, 27 What lake are they on?
We drive up there. My brother lives in Leona. And so it's like an hour drive to get there. But we'll just go out there in the pontoon, spend the whole day just getting crappies, bluegills, bass. If we get hot, we jump in and swim, climb back in.
Yeah, I was just up there.
I love it.
Before I went to Ely, I was at my dad's in 3 Lakes. He's got like 5 acres on Little Fork.
My brother, he cracked me up. We were out there and he goes, we were like going, I wonder why they call it 3 Lakes. And my brother goes, you know what? It's probably like some Native American, like hundreds of years ago. And, you know, before they have satellite and all that kind of stuff, obviously, climbs up a tree and he goes, huh, I see 3 lakes.
Right.
And that's like, now it's called 3 Lakes. But he had no idea there was like 28 lakes.
Yeah. You can fish 28 lakes without taking your boat out of the water.
It's beautiful. It's so nice up there.
Found one of the salamanders I was looking for when I was up there.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I was freaking out, man. I loved it.
My brother, really funny. My wife Jacqueline doesn't know that much about fishing, and she's, you know, since she's married me, we've taken her quite a few times now, and she enjoys it. She mostly just likes to hang out in the water and drink some wine while we fish. You know? And my brother's pontoon boat has a pull-up bathroom thing. You know, like it's got like a tent thing. And we were in some shallow water, and mostly we were catching like crappie and bluegill. And my wife goes into the bathroom, and mind you, so I've got my 2 teenage daughters on, and they've been swimming in the water. Like every once in a while, we'll take a break and we'll go out in the middle, and they'll jump in and swim. And it's at that time of the night in North Wisconsin where it's just beautiful, where the sun it's not quite set yet, but it's getting there, and it's just got just so much color on the lake.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful.
That's polka time. That's what they call the polka hour.
Polka hour. Yeah. And it's polka time. And
I just made that up, by the way.
And we're like in like this like kind of shallow water, and my brother was trying to fix one of his kids' rods or something, and his rod is just literally hanging out the side of the boat.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it starts to get pulled out of the boat.
Right.
And he catches it real quick, and my wife's in the bathroom thing. She has no idea what's going on. All of a sudden, she just starts hearing my brother going. My brother, like, he'll go from 0 to 10 when he gets really excited. All of a sudden, he's just like, "Get the fucking net! Get the fucking net!" He's like freaking out, and we're like, "What's going on?" And turns out that it was just literally, we're like 5 feet from the shore. A muskie
Hit one of the bluegills.
Yeah, but and so all of a sudden he's got a muskie on, and it was probably like maybe 2.5 feet or so. It wasn't a giant one, but he gets this thing and pulls it in, and I had to get the net for it and everything. And I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy awesome. And but here's the thing: half of its face was gone on one side. Like I don't know if
that's old Scarface.
Yeah,
you caught it.
Yeah, that's old Scarface. You know, it's the legend.
Been swimming those waters for 100 years.
But what's crazy is they already have crazy enough teeth.
Yeah.
But this thing, because half of its face was gone, you just saw just teeth all the way back. So my wife, she just hears all this commotion, and my kids are looking, and Jeremy's kids are looking, and they're like, everyone's like, what is that thing?
Zombie muskie.
And she comes out of the bathroom, and she's like, oh, what? Ugh. Like it's the most disgusting, creepy looking thing, and my girls. I
wonder what happened to it.
Well, my girls were like, "We've been swimming in this water with these monsters, and they will never go in the water again." They're like, and I've tried to explain to them.
That's like you got to go to a supper club up there and have a bartender tell you the story about muskies nipping off toes and stuff.
Yeah. But you're never gonna. They're gonna swim the other way. But anyway, that was crazy though. It was just like so accidental.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty common because the bluegill or whatever, the smaller fish gets hooked and it looks like it's in distress, and then the muskies or pike hit it. That just happened to me on my trip just now that I was on. I had a little pike.
Yeah.
I was just about to lean over to unhook it. Boom! This big pike just
got it.
Not a monster, but 3 times the size of the one I had.
That's
hooked,
awesome.
And it just T-boned it. It was just hanging on, like it wasn't hooked or anything. I had the little one hooked. And it just was like swimming around with it, and it just let go and got on with its life.
My brother and I one time we were like there was like this lake by his family's house in Leona, and the only way you can get to it is by pulling a canoe through the woods. And it's like landlocked. Portage. It's awesome because nobody's there, and it's just bass. And so we were just fishing for a couple hours, and largemouth. Yeah, largemouth. And my brother. We were just catching them like over and over. It was so much fun. Way too many mosquitoes. I think we were using leeches and worms, like real basic. That's
trying to see where you were at with your fishing skills.
No, I think we were just
Texas rig, baby brush hog, any of that.
No, like we were just using like Well, see, here's what happened was. The leeches and worms were working great. I mean, we were catching.
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Kind of a staple.
Sometimes I like to use like this rooster tail like spinner thing. But usually
or rooster tail.
Yeah, that catches everything.
Yeah. But, in line with the one blade.
Yep. And but my brother's like, I'm gonna put on this. He's got this really nice bait. I don't know what it was, but he puts it on, and like right away, bam, gets hit by this monster bass.
Yeah.
And it starts actually pulling us because we were in a canoe.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like, oh, this is awesome. We got jaws. And then the line snapped, and he was so pissed off because
probably a pike.
Because I don't know if there's
pike do that all the time.
Well, here's what happened though. He was pissed off because he was like a lure that he just got, and he really liked. So
he jumps in the water. Grabs it with his bare hands.
10 minutes later, maybe not even 10 minutes later, I get a big hit, and I'm like, holy shit! And I start pulling in, and I pull in this giant bass, and he gets the net, pulls it in, and his bait is sticking out. Oh, yeah. So I caught the same exact one, nice. And he got his bait back. Yeah. And he was like, oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
That's the kind of stuff that's fun. And then the wolves were hollowing around us and stuff.
Yeah, I heard wolves every time I go up. I heard them. Oh man, it gives me goosebumps. Dude. I was out there just as the sun was going down, and man, it's like the most haunting sound. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, whether you're catching fish or not catching fish, that's all that makes it worth it. It was that's such a cool.
I can't wait to go up there again.
Yeah, Ely has some of the natural wolf packs like that just roam up there.
Yeah.
I think there's like 5 or 6, and I mean, there's nothing else that sounds like that. It's crazy. Yeah. Dude,
the last couple times we've been up there, so it's ever since my wife met my brother's family, it's been kind of a not just my brother's family, but my family in general, because they all live up in North Wisconsin, and there's cougars up there, there's wolves, there's bear, they've been seeing moose up there.
Sasquatch.
Sasquatch is there.
The hodag is up there.
Stinky bastards. But
zombie pike.
So we've been in my brother's yard before, just like he's got a pretty big yard out in the woods, and we've seen bear like right in his yard. And my wife's like, "Holy shit, there's a bear!" You know. And then there's been times where we're driving down the road and a bear will run across the street. Last time we were there, we were driving, leaving and going back home to Chicago, and this giant wolf just comes running down this bank, just cuts across the road. I couldn't believe, for one, how huge it was, but also how friggin' fast it was.
Yeah.
Just didn't even care that there's cars, ran right between cars. It was amazing and terrifying at the same time. Like, because I've always imagined, like, you know, what happens if you see a wolf in the woods? Oh, just run up a tree real quick. Yeah, no.
So you can do that with a wolf. Maybe a bear will just follow you up.
Oh yeah, a bear
yank you back down.
Yeah, you're not gonna have any luck with that. But anyways, we've been all over the place on this here podcast. But this is the way I like it.
Yeah.
This is good stuff, I think. So before we end this, though, is there anything that you would like to promote, like website? Anything that's going on?
I mean, anyone that is knows me well enough knows I'm not a big promotion juggernaut.
Well, what's your website?
It's just timbiedron.com.
And the studio, the shop is called Pioneer.
So pioneertattoo.com.
Yeah, and
the shop.
if you want any awesome tattoo stuff, come to Chicago. But
I guess my Instagram is the most current stuff. That's Only the Dead Are Smiling.
Yeah.
That's some death metal stuff.
Yeah.
I did it oh yeah, that'll be cool. And then I'm like, oh great, now I set that up and I have to say that, you know, like well, people aren't going to remember.
My Instagram is Seiler Paints, and
I read that as Seiler Pants.
Yes. Yeah,
every time I look at it.
See, that's what I was just about to say. Is I talked with someone recently. He's like, this whole time I thought it was Seiler Pants.
That's funny because I probably looked at it 100 times before I was like, oh no, it's pants. That makes way more sense.
Yeah, that's so funny because I mean, I had a friend recently. He's like, dude, for years I was like, why does he call his Instagram Seiler Paints or Seiler Pants?
Your pet name for yourself.
Gosh, it's like I'm Seiler and I paint. I just thought that Jason Seiler was taken.
Right.
So. Anyways, thanks so much for doing this, man.
This man, it was fun.
This was a good time, man. And it was really good to catch up with you
again.
again.
We'll just do it every week. From here on out.
We'll just start a new
crew show, right?
We'll start a new podcast.
We'll start getting sound effects and fart noises and stuff.
Oh, that sounds actually like a lot of fun. That sounds really good. I'm going to have to put some weird sound effects in this one.
You could be Seiler Pants. I'll have to come up with a fun nickname for myself.
Seiler Pants. Yeah. And... let's see.
And the Boston, the Brooklyn Bartender.
There you go. Seiler Pants and the Brooklyn Bartender.
Oh, God.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think that's another one in the books, folks. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. As you know, we did things a little differently this week, and the fan challenge was changed from drawing and painting the guest to designing an original tattoo design using a koi fish as your subject. Tim and I had to record our talk a few days before the deadline, so unfortunately, I didn't get to show him the fan work until after we recorded. So I sent him your submissions, and he was kind enough to take a look at them and write down his thoughts on each of them, as well as pick one that was his favorite. So I will read through the images now and read to you what he had to say about them. The first one is by Mark Schmid, and this is what Tim had to say about it. Great creativity with the combination of architecture elements. I think the theme of this could be even more effective by paying even more attention to the roundness and tubular form of the koi, really adding an accuracy to the architecture sitting on the koi's back. So that's pretty cool. The second one, also by Mark Schmid, and this is what Tim had to say. Again, I appreciate the creativity in doing something unconventional by adding different elements like the undersea vignette. I'm always drawn to accuracy in anatomy. However, even if you are going to draw something with completely fantastical components, it still helps to begin with something that feels like real anatomy. Koi have a thickness, a solidness to their tubular bodies. If you start by nailing that, you can then add whatever, and it will still feel like it occupies a real space and volume. So, cool advice. So this next one is by Juan Carlos Pinella. And this is what Tim had to say. We've got the classical components of a koi and a degree more of that volume, that roundness to it. I think playing around with the composition could help this one out a lot. One thing I always pay attention to when I have multiple components, in this case, koi, lotus, and ripple water, is striking a balance between them. Decide what part demands more attention. When each component occupies the exact same visual space, nothing dominates. Simply making the koi bigger than the other two elements would help this one out considerably. So another bit of good advice there. This next one is by Darius Lipinski. And this is what Tim had to say. Definitely a fun one, good thought into a color scheme and decent anatomy. Some simple changes would really make the anatomy on this much stronger. Again, I'm such a big proponent of getting the believability of the form down. You can get as crazy as you want. You can distort features all you want, but if at their core they don't share the anatomy of the subject's face, it won't be recognized as them. For instance, a slight change to where the tail connects to the body of the koi would make that turn of the form that much more convincing. Makes sense? This next one is by Kristen Sessions. And this is what Tim had to say. Great that they went into an unexpected direction with the theme. Good thought to a color scheme. The anatomy is pretty good. Looks like they thought about details like how fins would emerge from the main form and how they would ripple in the water. I feel like this one could really stand out even more with a few more sessions to refine some things. I'd play around with the composition. The 3 small koi, for instance, are a nice touch, but are all the exact same size and position. So basically, kind of mix that up a little bit is what he's saying. Give it a little bit more dynamic. So this next one is by Ismini Sigala. And this is what Tim had to say. I like the unconventional pose of the koi. I think the anatomy for it in this position isn't quite there, but it's really close. On most of the entries, as with this one, I really want to see that chunky tube form that they have. That look that they would be heavy. I see a lot of koi drawings that taper too quickly to the tail and look top heavy. The composition with the lotus could be more dynamic. It's good that they are smaller than the koi, but they are each the exact same size. And I personally have an aversion to even numbered elements. I always find odd number of particular element more appealing. Makes sense? And finally, this last one is by Lars Erik Robinson, and this is what Tim had to say to Lars Erik Robinson. So Tim says, I really like the anatomy on this one. There is that chunkiness. The body is nice and solid even toward the tail. I guess they looked at some actual koi. That is always key. Few of us have the luxury of being able to bust out an accurate drawing of something based solely on our memory. So if you don't know, then use reference without just copying the photos. There are good details like how the tail attaches to the body. Oftentimes I see that done wrong. The downturn shape of the koi head is hard to nail. I think they have done a nice job with that here. My one criticism, listen Lars, my one criticism with composition is the cut and paste of the same koi. Using that quick feature is a great tool to experiment with in a layout before committing to it. But as a finished drawing, it feels too much like a shortcut. We all presumably love drawing, so draw all 4 koi. Experiment with different poses. So, yeah, I agree with Tim. I think that's, overall I thought that this was a really good piece, but it would have been more interesting, I think, to work it up a little bit more so they're all different. I mean, think about it. If you're getting that tattooed on yourself, you wouldn't want the exact same koi. You wouldn't want the same exact koi just, flipped around. You'd want something to be a little bit more different and, a little bit more creative. But yeah, overall, really, really nice work. Everybody, I thought, did a really nice work on this. So Tim picked a winner, and the winner for this fan art challenge is, drumroll, Mark Schmid. Tim says, your idea was creative and the anatomy is pretty decent. Looks like they put some work into it. So congratulations, Mark, and thank you to everyone who participated. Good morning, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.